Democratic member of the Texas House of Representatives, Trey Martinez Fischer, joins me now. It's good to see you, sir. You're coming to us from Illinois, the big flag of Texas behind you notwithstanding. You've been through this before. What do you expect to happen, and how can these results be any different than in the past when Democrats who bugged out of Texas ultimately returned?
Well, every quorum break is different and special, but really what lies in the balance here is our democracy. I mean, in the most powerful democracy in the world, we are having this stolen right before our eyes. So if it takes a group of Texans to camp out in Illinois, to rise up and wake this country up, to let folks know, like, hey, there is stuff going on here. We need to push back on this agenda. We need to have a system where voters pick their politicians and not let politicians pick their voters just because Donald Trump's afraid to lose an election fair and square. And I think it's working. You see momentum throughout the country, from California to New York, from Illinois to Texas.
The Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, has just put out a statement describing your actions as a cowardly desertion of your responsibility as an elected official.
Well, that's rich coming from Attorney General Paxton. What we would say is, like, listen, I don't respond to Ken Paxton. I respond to the constituents who elected me. I recognize the moment that we are in. People expect Democrats to fight like Democrats. And when you're going to come to my chamber and because you've bent the knee to Donald Trump and you're acting in desperation to create 5 Republican seats in Congress at the expense of Latinos and African Americans, we're just not going to sit by and say, come on in. You're in for a fight. And this fight is going to be meaningful. And like I said, we're going to wake up this nation. I'm told that for every seat that's created in Texas by a Republican, there'll be a governor somewhere else. That if it's going to be a Donald Trump race to the bottom, we will meet you halfway. And if Texas Democrats are the spark, well, then that's the role we'll play. This is not the fight that we asked for, but this is the fight we will finish.
So my audience understands what you're saying is ultimately the Texas Republicans will prevail because you'll ultimately have to go back. But in the interim, you hope this inspires actions, New York, Illinois, and California to redraw their maps to equalize the outcome in the midterms.
Well, I think we never give up. I think there is always a strategy to derail the entire piece of legislation. Let's be very clear. In short order, secretaries of state have to issue districts. People have to know where they're going to run. There is an entire process that takes place. We have men and women overseas that are going to get their ballots. A lot has to happen now. You just can't take your sweet time to change these districts. And if we're able to manage a quorum break that long, maybe that disrupts that process. And then there's the entire legal aspect of this to see whether or not a court will even allow this to happen. So listen, America is seeing with this, hyper-partisanship and this MAGA extreme governance, Texans have seen this for 20, if not 30 years. We know this fight, and we're in it for the long haul.
How long are you prepared to stay outside of the boundaries of the great state of Texas?
Well, I only pack one bag, so that's a clue right there. And I think it's as long as it takes. I mean, again, we have a delegation of House members that traveled to Albany today to meet with Governor Hochul to listen to our concerns and to understand that she may have a role to play in this big picture democracy. We had a delegation leave California. We're in communications with the governors of Maryland and other states. I think people understand where we are, and this is a real moment. And we need to rise to the occasion. And listen, what I hear more than anybody else, it's refreshing to see Democrats fight. And that's what this is really about, is to let folks know that we're not giving up and we don't care what the odds are. All we care about is being the voice for the people we represent.
And when you tell my audience that democracy is at stake, the Supreme Court, when asked this question before in previous efforts, said it was constitutionally permissible to redraw district lines mid-session. So what part of this, at its core, is anti-democratic or anti-constitutional?
Man, that's a fantastic question. Let me just tell you. So these lines that we currently have in Texas, Republican senators who drew them took an oath in federal court before 3 federal judges and said these maps are legal and have nothing to do with race. Now we have a Trump Justice Department that says we need to change these districts because you use race. So my question is, who's lying? Is the Trump DOJ lying? Is the senator from Houston lying who drew these lines? And so, listen, you can draw these. It doesn't make it right, but you cannot do this. The Supreme Court didn't say, oh, by the way, do this whenever you want, and we don't care if you run over the backs of African Americans and Latinos and Asians. I think there's some protections for that. And so, like I said, you can do what you want with legislation, but we're all equal in federal court.
Member of the Texas House of Representatives, Trey Martinez Fischer. Sir, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right now, we're going to be joined by a Republican member of the Texas House of Representatives, Brian Harrison. Mr. Harrison, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I think you've had a chance to hear some of what Texas Democrats have been telling me for the benefit of this show. I want to give you an open floor. Respond.
Yeah, pure, cynical, hypocritical nonsense. Everything they're talking about. I mean, the height of the dishonesty, fleeing the state. We were on the floor 30 minutes ago. They weren't here. They're running, hiding behind Governor Pritzker in Illinois. Acting as if the state of Texas is doing something novel or totally different is preposterous. We're not even doing the types of things that states like California, New York, and Illinois have done to a much more aggressive stance. For example, why didn't a single one of my Democrat colleagues mention to you that in Illinois, where Republican voters have 45% of the vote, Governor Pritzker only gives Republicans 15% of the congressional delegation? He mentioned California. Well, let's talk about what California does. California, 40% of the vote in California is for Republicans. California gives them 17% of the congressional districts. Let's talk about New York. 42% of the voters in New York are Republican, but New York gives them 26% of the congressional districts. I could go down the line. What they're angry about, they're not angry that states are redistricting for partisan political advantage. No. They're totally fine with it when all these blue states have done it for the last decade. What they're mad about, but what they won't tell you, isn't that states redistrict for partisan purposes, but that a Republican state is doing this. And quite frankly, the state of Texas should have done this before now. We should have done it in the regular session, and we should have this already in the rearview mirror. And I'm going to make another point about this. One thing the Democrats said that is true: the stakes couldn't be higher. Like the future of the republic, the future of America could quite literally be hanging in the balance, because if we have a margin in the U.S. Congress less than 5 seats, our redistricting efforts here could quite frankly control whether or not the Congress in the upcoming midterms falls to the radical Democrat Party. And so the state of Texas and Republicans, elected Republicans in Texas, the elected Republican leadership here in Texas, should be doing everything we can to make sure that Congress doesn't fall to the Democrats. And quite frankly, this is an abject failure of the elected Republican leadership in the state of Texas, who let the Democrats flee, even though we had quorum and we had all the tools to keep them here. So across the board, everything they've just said to you is complete cynical nonsense, but also I've got to be an equal opportunity critic here and say that in this case, as is too often the case in the great state of Texas, Democrats are fighting harder for the future than the elected Republicans who have controlled the Austin swamp for far too long.
Mr. Harrison, you said this should have happened before. Does that mean you question the legitimacy of the reason given for doing this redistricting now? Meaning it has to correct a racial flaw that wasn't identified earlier?
No, that's not what I mean at all. What I mean is there's some confusion about this because we're not actually in a regular session. We gavelled in January. My point is that we had the entire first half of the year, we had the entire regular session where things like this should have happened. But on Republican priority across the line, the Texas government failed. From property taxes to election integrity to bans on taxpayer-funded lobbying, all types of Republican priorities did not pass in Texas during the regular session, like redistricting, because, quite frankly, Democrats are being given control. And one thing that I wish CBS and other news would report, all these Democrats that are fleeing the state, they're the ones that actually elected the so-called Republican leadership in the Texas House of Representatives. Voters in Texas, they want bold Republican leadership. They deserve bold Republican leadership. They reelected President Trump with a 14-point landslide. But what these Austin, Texas-level Republicans do is they turn around and give Democrats power that they didn't earn at the ballot box. And the Democrat caucus, the literal Texas House Democrats, who are abandoning their post to do the bidding of the ultra-liberal Democrat bosses in Washington, D.C., they are actually the power center, the ones who elected the nominally Republican Speaker of the Texas House, who had all the power to stop them from fleeing the state. It's one of the biggest undertold stories of their ability to delay or potentially thwart the redistricting efforts here, that's not a victory for Democrats, anywhere near as much as it is an abject failure for the weak establishment Republicans that have controlled the Texas government for far too long.
Brian Harrison, I appreciate the time and your willingness to participate. Thanks so much.
Always great to be with you.
All right, well, let's start with, just so we have it all in one place, everyone's name, how you spell it, and what part of the state you represent. John, go ahead.
I'm John Bucy, John-Bucy, and I represent Austin, Williamson County.
I'm Ann Johnson, ANNJOHNSON, represent part of Houston, including the medical center.
James Talarico, James, T as in Tom, ALARICO. I represent Central Texas, Travis County.
All right. We are not in Texas anymore, are we? Bottom line it for us. Why are you here?
You know, special sessions in Texas are meant for emergencies, and we had an emergency in Texas. We had a cabin full of 8-year-old girls get washed away in the middle of the night. We had families calling 911, begging for help, only to be told by operators that no help was coming. Ultimately, 137 Texans lost their lives. That's an emergency worthy of our time, our attention, and our action. You know, Greg Abbott is prioritizing Donald Trump with this special session. Instead of taking action to help the flood victims of Central Texas, he is prioritizing trying to steal 5 congressional seats from the people of Texas. This isn't just a Texas fight, this is an American fight that will impact all of us. So Texas Democrats ran into the fight by coming to Illinois to stand up for the people of our state.
Representative Johnson, he says you're running into the fight. You know that Republicans in the state, Republicans out of the state, look at what you guys are doing and thinking you're running away from the fight. You're running away from your jobs by not being in Austin today.
Yeah, no, abandoning your job is going to Cancun in the middle of a deadly freeze, right? Abandoning your job is cutting health care when people need access. Abandoning your job is cutting public education when we already have one of the worst education systems in the nation. What we are doing is the fundamental protection by our founding fathers in the Texas Constitution that says the minority party has the opportunity to break quorum when you know that the majority has really gone off the rails. The fact that Texas Republicans are willing to sell their soul, sell out their state, and sell out the American people to serve the interest of Donald Trump and give him 5 seats at a time where we know he is afraid of voters voting on his policies next November in 2026. When Donald Trump called Georgia Republicans and said, I just need you to find me 11,000 votes, they said, no, sir, that's a step too far. But when he called Texas Republicans and said, I need you to steal me 5 seats, they said, does July work for you? Well, it doesn't work for us as Texas Democrats. This is not just about our voters. It's about the nation. And it's important for people to know they have threatened us personally. They have threatened our arrest. They have threatened our jobs. They have threatened us. The solution is if we show up today at 3 o'clock and sit and be quiet, then we get to keep ours. But it kills the voice of everybody in this country. And so we won't sit and shut up to have them shut up the voices of voters.
Y'all have done this before, and ultimately after a few weeks it ends, everyone goes back to Austin, and Republicans ultimately get what they want. How is this time going to be any different?
I actually disagree with that. In 2021, my colleagues here and I broke quorum to stop a voter suppression bill. And by breaking quorum and shining a spotlight, a national spotlight, on that voter suppression effort, it pressured the Republicans in Texas to take out the worst parts of that bill. The ban on souls to the polls, Sunday morning voting, which African-American churches use in Texas to get their people to the polls. A provision that would have allowed Republicans to overturn election results that they didn't like. All of that was taken out because we broke quorum. So this is an effective tool in our toolbox to fight for our constituents and make harmful legislation less dangerous. We're hopeful that's what will happen here.
So then is the end goal, if not to completely redraw the map, to redraw it in a less Republican way?
I think our goal is to pressure blue states who have a Democratic trifecta to threaten retaliation and maybe even move forward with that retaliation, because if one side is going to cheat, all bets are off. And maybe that kind of pressure will convince our Republican colleagues and the president to walk back from the brink, because none of us want gerrymandered states. Gerrymandering is wrong whether Democrats do it or Republicans do it. Every state should have an independent, citizen-led redistricting commission so that voters are choosing their politicians, politicians aren't choosing their voters.
But not until the other side does it first.
Well, we can't unilaterally disarm.
Yeah, and that's what they're asking us to do, which is we get to do it, but you don't.
Right.
And so we're not afraid. We've all been engaged in trying to promote this legislation. We're not afraid of letting the voters pick our lines, and we run fairly. The Republicans don't want to do that. And that's what people need to know. This is not normal. It is not normal that midway through the decade, we have a constitutional amendment that says you can redistrict once every 10 years. It is not normal for them to say, hey, we're only 5 years in, but we're nervous about what might happen next November. Texas, you redraw the lines. They're not only changing the game, they're trying to put us on a different field. And so if Republicans want to go there, how do you not expect Democrats to stand back up? This is about the voice of the voters.
You know, Greg Abbott is the only person that can call a special session. Our chairman said yesterday we have effectively killed the rest of this special session. We're ready to go work with him on helping the Central Texans that were affected by the flood. He needs to get his priorities straight. He needs to take care of the people of Texas, and we'll all get to work. And we're welcoming him back to the table to have those conversations.
So let's say he calls you tomorrow and says, okay, come back and we'll do the flooding first.
Too late. I'm on the committee that's been hearing it. We've been doing hearings for 2 weeks. We've been there for 2 weeks. We have agenda items for 2 weeks. They have put one bill before us for a hearing. One bill, only redistricting. We've had time. We've had the opportunity. They have proven this is not about anything else. It's about them serving the interest of Trump and only Trump.
Yeah, let's be honest about what this is. Donald Trump is scared. His policies aren't going to win the day. He knows it, so he's colluding with Greg Abbott to steal the 2026 midterm elections. That's what's at stake here. If Governor Abbott wanted to help the flood victims, he could be using executive power today. He's using us as tools to try to get to his work to help Donald Trump.
And it's even worse than misplaced priorities. He's using flood victims and their families as leverage to do Donald Trump's bidding and rig the next election. I mean, this is rock bottom. It's disgusting, it's immoral, and we should all reject it regardless of our political party.
Now, you all agree then that Democrats in other states, if they can, should try to do something similar and redraw their maps?
No, what we want is for Greg Abbott to come to a census, put the people of Texas first, and get back to the work for the people of Texas and the flood victims. Let's stop this charade to try to steal the 2026 midterms. Let's have everybody put down their weapons, and let's go home and work for the people of Texas.
Given that it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
Well, we're here to push for that to happen.
Hope is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Let's walk through some of the specifics of you being here. How long could this go on?
In what sense?
How long are you going to be here in Illinois?
So, you know, we are from Texas and we love football. When the other side is first and goal at the one, you play defense. And right now the game and the play ahead of us is finishing out this session. So we have until the end of this session to show that we are unified to break quorum. It is up to Governor Abbott, because he has the procedural mechanism to call us back over and over and over again. It is up to him what he thinks is a priority for us. Does he want us back to serve the interests of the people of Texas, or does he want to call us back to serve Trump? And so I think today you will see Texas Democrats are unified, that we recognize the one bill they want is to buy 5 seats, because the big ugly bill passed by one vote. That's what they want, and we're saying no. We're not going to dismantle the voices of our voters.
Halfway through this special session, we've had 8 hearings on redistricting and only 2 on helping the people of the flood. That's unacceptable, and it shows where Governor Abbott's priorities are.
I'll also just add it's appropriate that we are in the land of Lincoln, because Abraham Lincoln, when he was a state senator in 1840, broke quorum by jumping out of a window at the Illinois State Capitol. Thankfully, we didn't have to jump out of a window, but we are participating in a long American tradition of standing up to bullies, of speaking truth to power, of civil disobedience, of good trouble, and we're proud to do it.
So halfway through the session, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying we'll be here for the other half until that special session is set to expire.
Yeah, that's what we've all committed to.
Okay, so 2 weeks roughly. Yep. If at that point he calls another one and says, I want to do it again, flooding and redistricting,
we'll assess our options.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're here. We're here to remind the people we're supposed to work for them.
Right.
They're not supposed to serve the interests of Trump. So this is to shine a light again, a second time, on Texas Republicans putting a priority on politics instead of policy. It's time for people to speak up and say, look, y'all get back to work. You got problems you got to solve. You need to address healthcare. You need to address public education. You need to address the Texas grid. And right now, you need to address the issue of flood mitigation and extreme weather in Texas. So talk about those issues. Don't bring us up here to redraw lines. I don't have a single constituent that likes the idea of going in on election day and already knowing the outcome of the election, because politicians picked you as opposed to you picking your politicians. So let's get back to allowing folks to draw the lines in such a way that makes everybody's vote matter.
Another specific about you guys being here. Who's paying for all this?
I mean, that's the hit on all of us, right? And that's the hit on our group, is to be able to do this. And so you're right, it is an expense. And that's part of where we are. They're threatening personal fines, they're threatening arrest, they're threatening vacating our job. They are threatening us. And we know why they're threatening us, because the threat worked for them. When Trump threatened to primary them and have them lose their seat, they gave in and they gave him what he wanted. If you're not willing to lose the job, to do the job, then that's not public service. And so we're here because it is a sacrifice. It is public service.
You know, we're fighting for democracy, and we're putting everything on the line. We're here because if we don't do this, and if Donald Trump gets his way, then we know our constituents are going to suffer. They're going to continue to cut health care. They're going to continue to cut public education funding, and that's unacceptable for the future of this country.
But you all are accepting donations from either Texas and out-of-state Democrats, right?
And that's the beauty. You know, we're fighting for the people, and the people are the ones funding this quorum break. We have been flooded with grassroots donations across the state of Texas from our constituents, Democrats, independents, and some Republicans who want us to fight for free and fair elections. And that's how we're funding this operation, and we're proud to have that be our source of income.
The governor says it's a bribe.
Where was he when Ken Paxton was going through his court case?
Well, and the contrast is stark. Greg Abbott took $12 million from an out-of-state billionaire to defund our public schools. We're relying on grassroots donations from ordinary Texans to stand up for their voice in the democratic process. I'm fine with that contrast.
And other people from out of state. I mean, to be fair, there's
Sure.
money coming from other
because
places.
this is
the
not,
governor's helping you.
And this is
Governor
not
Illinois.
just, well, this is not just a Texas problem. This is an American problem. Because if Donald Trump is able to rig the next election, he won't have any check on his power. He'll be able to keep wrecking our economy, starting wars, protecting pedophiles without any accountability. And so this is about whether or not we're going to have checks and balances in the future. This is a national problem, not just a Texas problem.
Governor, the Attorney General say they may seek your arrest. You willing to go to jail over this?
We knew there were going to be consequences. And I think all of us know that this is bigger than us as individuals. It's bigger than the jobs we have. We are fighting for the American experiment. We're fighting for representative democracy and whether or not that will continue. And so we're willing to face whatever consequences may come our way.
But I also want to make sure people recognize this threat of arrest, this is not normal. Do not think that we can turn into a nation where you arrest and jail your political opposition for not only rendering their voice for the people, but doing something that is protected by the Texas Constitution. A quorum break is written into the Texas Constitution. It is a tool our founding fathers gave us. The threat of arrest is something that should be a red alarm for a lot of folks.
Well, I just want to say it's very consistent. Greg Abbott is trying to silence the voices of Texans and prevent them from picking the elected officials of their choice. And now he's literally saying he's going to remove the representatives that the people have put into office. So he's taken a page out of Donald Trump's authoritarian playbook, and it's something we should all reject.
You know, the people of Texas want leadership, and Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton have shown that they are afraid of that. They're only going to do what Donald Trump tells them to do, and we're trying to offer that. We're trying to fight for the people of Texas because they've turned their backs on them, and that's why we're here. And so we're not afraid of the consequences. When we heard Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton's threats yesterday, it just made us know that they were scared. They were scared they weren't going to be able to do the bidding of the president, and that we were here doing the right thing. And we're standing up for 31 million Texans while we do this.
You know there are Democrats in your state, Democrats in your caucus, Democrats who represent you in Congress, and Democrats all across the country who say if Texas Republicans are going to do this, Democrats have got to do this in some states where they have full control. In essence, fight fire with fire. Do we not run the risk, though, of burning it all down if this keeps up?
Look, we're trying to raise awareness. That's our main thing. We want this to stop. We want Greg Abbott to back down. There was a Republican in Congress in California that today filed a bill to make a national stop to this because they understand that what we're doing is raising the conversation and that this would be bad for everybody. So to your point, yes, we run that risk. Greg Abbott needs to back down and then everybody can back down and we can go back to working for the people of Central Texas that need help right now. We want the American people to know that this isn't a Texas problem, this is an American problem. We're talking to everyone across the country because if Greg Abbott and Donald Trump get away with stealing 5 seats in Texas, that's just the beginning. And it will impact all of us. We're talking about less health care for every American, less support for our public schools, and Texas will just be the beginning. They will bring this policies and procedure to every state. So all Americans must take this threat seriously. They must join us in this resistance as we stand up and fight back against Donald Trump and what he's trying to do right now in Texas.
Yet don't forget, last year they did this in North Carolina. They just needed to move 4 seats in North Carolina, and he got his bill by 1 vote. And so now he needs 5 seats in Texas. When we say it is time for Democrats to stand up and say, look, you guys can't keep moving the playing field. You want to do it, the American people ought to expect that we ought to do it too. Or we reach this point where we say, you know what, you guys should stop drawing lines. Let the people draw the lines. And we're fine with that.
I think the only thing I would add is that this is not an issue of party, it's an issue of power. Yes, Democrats and Republican politicians both gerrymander, and it's wrong in both instances. This is particularly egregious, it's particularly brazen, particularly discriminatory in the middle of a decade. That's why we're here. But we have to end this practice once and for all. People in power want to stay in power, and so they rig the game, they rig the system in their favor. It's time for the American people, regardless of their political party, to stand up against it.
And to the Republican charge that you guys leaving the state allows them to turn around and say they're playing games, they're trying to draw attention to this, they're avoiding the flood debate, you say what?
We have to use every tool in the toolbox. We have a constitutional right to break quorum. It's something that we are doing. Quorum means withholding, and that's what our constituents want them to do, is to stop this bill any way we can. This is one of the tools that we have, and so we're using it.
This is kind of like the bully that takes your lunch money every day. At some point, you got to stand up. Otherwise, you just end up broke and hungry. And so that's where we are politically. We've told Republicans, enough, you've gone way too far.
And they're using the flood victims to muddy the water here. I would challenge the American people to look and listen and see if the Republicans actually defend these maps. That's what I want to hear. They may point at something else to try to distract the American people. Let's see if they'll actually defend the maps that they've just drawn.
Democratic State Representative and Chairman of the Texas House Democratic Caucus, Gene Wu of Houston. Thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thank you.
Well, you're certainly in the political spotlight tonight, Tuesday night, when we're speaking, hours after Governor Abbott filed a 29-page emergency petition with the Texas Supreme Court to remove you from office. So when you first saw this, what was your reaction? Were you surprised?
I thought it couldn't be real, that this is just absolute insanity. I have very few words about how dumb this is.
And so I know you issued a very big statement. The governor accused you of basically forfeiting and abandoning your office because you have left and you've led the other Democratic members as caucus chair to leave the state, break quorum, etc. So how do you respond to that? Are you abandoning your office?
Well, it's not my office, and it's sure as hell not Governor Abbott's office. This office belongs to the people of the state of Texas, and I have taken an oath to defend those people and to protect them. And when Governor Abbott conspires with a disgraced president to use unconstitutional, illegal, racial gerrymandering to strip power away from communities who have spent decades building up their strength, building up their voice, building up their power, to have it stripped away by Donald Trump, that's not going to happen under my watch. We're here to deny this corrupt government their ability to destroy our communities. I'm here defending my community and doing my job to the absolute best of my ability.
And you brought up the congressional maps, which I want to get to in just a minute. But the governor also said in his news release today, he called you, quote, the ringleader of the derelict Democrats. And he said in his petition with the Texas Supreme Court, quote, "What is at stake here? Nothing less than the future of Texas. If a small fraction of recalcitrant lawmakers choose to run out the clock today, they can do so for any and every regular or special session, potentially bankrupting the state in an attempt to get their way. That means every state budget could be held hostage until the whims of a small fraction of legislators is satisfied." How do you respond to that?
So one thing is, unlike Governor Abbott's motion that he just filed, which is illegal because this law is very clear on this matter, that only the Attorney General or District Attorney can file it, and it must be filed in District Court. What he's doing is against the law. What we're doing is supported by the Constitution of this state, supported by the laws of the state, which explicitly allow for a quorum break, and is supported by the opinions of the courts of this state, saying that quorum breaking by the minority is a legal and the legitimate political tool. Not only that, the Attorney General himself wrote a recent opinion stating point blank that using the quorum break process is a legitimate means by the legislature, by people within the legislature. We're doing what we're supposed to do. We are using the only tool remaining to us because time and time again, we've tried to talk to the Republicans, tried to negotiate with the people on the other side, and time again, they have ignored us. They have ignored their own people. They have ignored the will of the people of the state of Texas. And because of that, because of this gross corruption, we had to do the only thing remaining to us. We had to use the only tool left, and that is to break quorum and deny this corruption any more power.
And I know that the Texas Constitution allows for quorum breaking. It's in the Texas Constitution, but at the same time, it also allows for quorum enforcing. And the language is even basically saying that the Texas House and the Texas Senate have the authority to physically restrain members and bring them back to the Texas Capitol, those that are within the state of Texas. And so I'm wondering, are you going to be returning to the Texas Capitol by this next deadline that was set today by Speaker Dustin Burrows for Friday at 1 p.m.?
So they can do whatever they want to do. In fact, the ball is really in their court. We have said that we are going to end this corrupt special session. We will make this known to the entire state to warn the people of what they're doing and how corrupt it is. And what happens after that? What happens after that is up to them. What happens after that is up to them to decide whether they want to continue this corruption or whether they will do what the people have asked them to do. That's not up to us. That's up to them. They're in charge of the state. The Republicans have been in charge of the state for 30 years, breaking it down piece by piece, making life miserable for everyone. They are responsible for that. They control everything. And what we're telling people is, you don't have to accept that. You don't have to stand for that. If you are sick and tired of this, if you want to end the corruption, let's do it now. Let's have everyone stand up. If you believe in this country, if you believe in hard work and fair play, stand up and fight for it.
And so if I hear you correctly, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You are not going to be returning to Texas by 1 p.m. Friday to the Capitol to try for the House session, right? I mean, you're staying out of state. You're going to run out the clock for the special session. Is that right?
I think I'll say it the way that Barbara Gervin Hawkins, the chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, said it best. Hell no.
So you're staying put. And so is that for most of the Democratic members as well?
Yeah. Look, our members, we had long discussions about this prior to us leaving, prior to us breaking quorum. We are under no illusion about how dangerous this could be and what risk it holds for all of us. But we are all doing this because we love our state, because we value the people in it, and because we are tired of watching the corruption that has invaded our system. We are doing this to save the state.
And why not go back and fight it out or negotiate with Republicans on these maps?
because there's no interest in negotiations. The Republicans can only do what Donald Trump tells them to do. They have no independent thinking. They have no independent will anymore. It's simply that by Donald Trump saying that he demands it, they must obey the king. There is no choice for them. There's no negotiation for them. There is no free will for them. They can do nothing. And so we will not stand by and be complicit in the destruction of our state. Democrats will do everything we can to fight back and to defend the last little bits of what makes America great.
And so let me ask you, because now Attorney General Paxton has warned Democrats who don't return that he's going to be possibly doing the very same thing that the governor did today to try to remove you. He'll do that to the other Democratic members. What have they said about that?
I mean, first of all, I think it's really important to note that their first gut reaction was threats and violence. That they're saying that we will come get you, we'll destroy this, we'll destroy that, we'll come arrest you, we'll hold you in custody. People who are doing good things don't have to threaten others with intimidation and violence to get what they want. People who are doing good things don't have to do that because they're doing good things. You know what they're doing is wrong by their reaction. They know, you know that what they're proposing is authoritarian, is fascist, is the kind of action that Americans fought against. We have spent lives to free people from dictatorships that do the exact same thing. People know that this smells wrong and that it is wrong.
So let's talk a little bit about the congressional maps, because Republicans, the way they drew them, want 5 more Republican seats. They've taken 2 from South Texas, 1 from your area in Houston, 1 from Austin, 1 from our area in North Texas. And so I know that there has already been a court case playing out in El Paso on the 2021 maps. And so, you know, are you going to be, I guess you can't really file legal action against these maps yet, or is that in the works?
So we are going to take every avenue that is available to us to fight this, whether it's in the courts, whether it's in the legislature, whether it's in the public sphere. We're going to fight this. But remember this. Number one, since the Voting Rights Act was enacted, Texas has been in violation, intentionally racially discriminating against communities since the inception of the Voting Rights Act. Every single time, Texas has been found in direct violation. They were found in direct violation in 2021. We accused them of it. It went to court. We took evidence on it. We went to the courts. We're still waiting for that opinion. And what this is happening is, one of the things that's so egregious about this, they're not just redistricting and doing racial gerrymandering out of nothing. They're doing it on top of a map that is already illegal and racially gerrymandered to split up communities and to destroy them.
Well, no court has found that just yet, but I mean, the back in the 2021 maps, obviously the legislature, what was different is all of the incumbents were protected. The Democrats were protected and the Republicans were protected. Now Republicans are going on offense to try to get 5 more seats. Yeah. And so I do think it's interesting. Do you think going forward that there will be more redistricting going forward? Is this the new trend now?
Yeah, and I think the point that people need to understand is that this is not normal political shenanigans. This is not the normal kind of thing. This is endgame. This is the boss level. If they're able to do this, if the president of the United States can willy-nilly just go to any state and says, I demand more seats out of your state, and we do it without any regard to the Constitution, to the laws of this country, to the people of these communities. We don't care about Democrat and Republican balances. What we care about are these communities. We're saying we don't care who these communities vote for, but we want them kept together. We want them to retain the power that they have spent decades building. We're not about Democrats versus Republicans. What we're fighting for our communities to have the right to choose who they want, to have the right to speak up with power to get actually what they need for their communities and not be silenced. This is their way of stealing their power and silencing them.
And let me ask you one other question, or two other questions, and I appreciate your time. So in the Justice Department sent the state of Texas a letter, which obviously you've seen, saying that coalition districts that were drawn a long time ago, they cannot be just in perpetuity. And so I'm wondering, how do you respond to that? Because they've said, Texas used to have their maps pre-cleared by the Justice Department. The Supreme Court said that was no longer necessary. So how do you respond to that?
It's all garbage. Because that letter, while it was maybe an excuse for them to do something, during these hearings, we asked them to bring the author of this memo, explain what this means. And they said, well, their email bounced because they had an out of office message. And in 3 weeks, we couldn't contact anyone at the DOJ. No one could come. In all that time, we couldn't find somebody at the governor's office to have them explain, well, this is what the governor meant. Every time we redistrict, we know what we're doing, because after a census, we said the population has changed. We have to redistrict. This time, we're in the between two census. And in the middle of the decade, we ask, why are we here? What are we doing? No one knows. The Republicans all deny even knowing about the letter. We had to hand it to them. What this is a lie. What this is a fraud. They're trying to lie and cheat their way into staying in power because they know they're going to lose, because they are doing things that the American people hate. And they are trying to lie, cheat, and steal your power. Don't let them.
And my last question to you is, Republicans say, you went to Illinois, and in Illinois they say, look, the Democrats do the same thing that they are accusing the Republicans of doing. They've got strange-looking gerrymandered districts in Illinois. The Democrats have even more gerrymandered districts than Texas has, they say. And so what do you say to Republicans who say, you're just hypocrites because in Texas, it's, Republicans want to do the same thing that Democrats have done in Illinois and California and New York, et cetera?
Yeah, so the reason this is a problem, has been a problem, is because Democrats have never responded in the past. Republicans have done this repeatedly in the past, over and over again. The last time this happened in Texas was 2003. The problem is every time the Republicans do this, Democrats have not responded to it and not done the same in response. And what we're saying is, if we allow Republicans to do this, if we allow Donald Trump to order this, once it starts, blue states will say, well, screw that, we're going to do it. And then everyone's going to do it every single time. What happens when we get a new president? Every new president is going to direct states to change the balance of power in their favor. That's not democracy. That's a monarchy. You're telling people who their leaders are, not letting the people tell you who their leaders are. That's not the American way. And we should stop this for Republicans and Democrats. But as long as Republicans are unwilling to obey the law and listen to the people, Democrats don't really have a choice. This is like people throwing nukes over. If they launch and you don't respond, the only thing they're going to do is launch more. And now what we're seeing is Democrats not doing it, but saying, if you launch any more at us, we will launch all of ours. I'm sorry that that's the way it is, but Democrats are done just being nice. We have to fight back because we're no longer fighting for us. We're no longer fighting for just Democrats. We're fighting for the American people. We're fighting for the American way of life. We're fighting for everyone who still believes that if you work hard and play by the rules, that you should win, that you should get ahead. We're fighting for those people. And we need people all around this country. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican or nothing at all. If you believe in America that still rewards hard work and fair play, we need you to stand up and join us now. before it's too late. We need everyone to fight back and fight for the country that they believe in before it's too late.
Democratic State Representative and Chairman of the Texas House Democratic Caucus, Gene Wu of Houston. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Republican State Representative Katrina Pierson of Rockwall, thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So your thoughts on the Texas Democrats breaking quorum and all of the national attention that this has received?
Well, I think it was pretty indicative that this may happen. However, Jack, I think that this is probably the best thing that happened for the Texas GOP, considering I'm on the redistricting committee. I went all over the state. We heard testimony, several hours of testimony from people all over the state that were complaining about the current map. And the proposed map actually addresses the majority of the concerns, and that is what is reaching national attention now, because the irony is that Democrats have fled to states like Illinois and New York, and these are the states that have already done this. And so it puts a spotlight really on them and their inability to stay and do their jobs. We have a constitutional obligation here. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't like a bill, like any other bill, there's a button on your desk to vote no. Instead, they chose to flee the state, backing up all of the other important legislation that we are trying to address, like legislation for the flood victims and lowering property taxes.
You talked about a lot, so we'll go break it all down. So let me just ask you first about the headline coming out this morning out of Chicago that there was a bomb threat against the Texas Democrats, the hotel that they are staying up in Chicago. Just your reaction to that.
Well, I think that's terrible if that's true. I think that violence is just, I abhor it, has no place in politics. And I also think that, the rhetoric that's being used is inciting some of this. One of the issues we keep hearing is that, everything is racist. And in fact, Texas has maps that has increased minority representation. So I think a lot of the rhetoric is inciting some unnecessary attention.
They blame the Republicans for the rhetoric.
Well, of course they do. I mean, that's their MO. I mean, Democrats since the beginning of time have been, claiming racism and victimhood. And as I said, anybody can go back and watch the public hearings when it comes to minority representation. I mean, you had Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia come in, and she talked about having representation for people who spoke their language and their culture. Jasmine Crockett came in and talked about having people who voted who looked like you. And then here we are with maps who do just that. And if Democrats truly believe what they are saying about racism and representation, then Lizzie Fletcher should resign immediately.
And let me ask you, because I do want to take a deeper dive in those maps, but I also want to ask you about what Governor Abbott filed, this emergency petition to remove the Texas House Democratic Caucus Chair, Gene Wu, from office. I saw on social media you agreed with that. Why is that?
Well, because again, we all are away from our families. Kids started school today. People wanted to go on vacations. We've already been in session for 5 months. We are constitutionally required to be here. So pulling political stunts like that is not representing your districts, because again, you have buttons on your desk. That is your voice for your people. So this has upended all kinds of things like property taxes and flood victim relief. And these guys are fleeing for political purposes, and there should be accountability.
Let me ask you, though, because the Texas Constitution does allow for quorum breaking. Isn't that a valid defense?
Well, not only does the Constitution do all kinds of things, but there are also consequences outlined within the law. So here we are at a showdown at the state level. But what I'll also say is we have serious issues to address in the state of Texas, particularly with regards to the flood that happened after the regular session. And again, you are able to represent your district by voting your vote. And they don't want to do that because they don't want to face the truth, Jack. The truth is that minorities in the state are trending Republican, and that is what's actually being highlighted. And that's why I say it's probably the best thing that ever happened for us.
And so let me ask you just on this point, because I know some lawmakers have already filed bills that would basically, if lawmakers don't show up for a consecutive amount of days, I think one of the bills said 7 days, that they in fact could be removed from office that way, and so make it a state law. Is that something that you would support?
I would absolutely support that. Again, we are not paid the big bucks to do this, and people have jobs and they have families. So when you sign up for this, you are signing up to exercise a duty, and you take an oath to the Constitution, and you need to show up to fulfill those duties. We have serious issues that we need to address with regards to the floods in this state. I mean, the whole country saw the devastation that Texas faced, and we should be addressing that today. But instead, Democrats are playing racial politics and stopping the process.
I want to read you what Representative Wu told me in an interview last night. He said, quote, "When Governor Abbott conspires with a disgraced president to use constitutional illegal racial gerrymandering to strip power away from communities who have spent decades building up their strength, building up their voice, building up their power, to only have it stripped away by Donald Trump, that's not going to happen under my watch. We're here to deny this corrupt government their ability to destroy our communities." Your thoughts?
Again, it's just racist political rhetoric. They fled to states who have already done this. More importantly, if you look at the maps, and I encourage you to show the viewers the maps side by side, the maps are much more compact, much more diverse, and addresses the majority of the concerns. We literally had a citizen testify from San Antonio saying it's not right for me to live in San Antonio and have someone representing me in Austin. And guess what? In the new map, they have their own district now. So again, it's just a bunch of political rhetoric. We need to get the business of Texas done.
And as far as the map, what do you say to the fact that, the president asked Governor Abbott to add this agenda item on the special session and, wanted 5 new Republican maps, and 2 of them come from South Texas. So all those districts along the border, most of them who voted for President Trump, would now be red districts. 1 district from Houston, 1 district from Austin, 1 district from North Texas. Congresswoman Julie Johnson, 32, that would be a Republican seat. And so why do you think this is the right move for Texas?
Well, it's political, the way the state has been trending politically, and that is the law. We even had lawyers who testified who could not dispute the law. And again, the other states have already done this. Texas is just catching up. So I don't see anything wrong with it. It's definitely something that, I asked some of the members during the committee hearings is, do you believe that these minorities deserve accurate representation? And there's really no answer to that, but I believe they do. The people of Texas believe that they do. The Republican Party certainly believes that they do. And now they're going to have the opportunity because, to your point, President Trump flipped counties along the border, and those voters have a right to be represented by whom they choose.
And do you think that redistricting is going forward, happen more often now? Obviously, everybody's used to once in a decade, and this changes things. And so now it would be in midterms for 2026. And do you think this is going to happen more often, and should it?
Well, look, I think it depends on if your maps are being challenged or not. The Texas maps were being challenged, and that's really what I believe spurred all of this. They didn't like the previous maps either, and this one is actually much better looking based on the concerns that I've heard on the committee. So if they're going to continue to challenge the maps, then the maps are probably going to be redrawn.
And let me ask you also about President Trump's impact on the Texas legislature this session. School choice, he very much encouraged lawmakers, the Republicans in the House, to pass the bill, and now he has endorsed all of them who voted for it for re-election. Then we saw the Justice Department come out and sue the state, which was resolved almost immediately as far as ending in-state tuition for Dreamers and people who are not here legally. And then at the same time, now we're seeing this, where the president has asked Republicans to increase the number of GOP congressional districts in the state. So do you think that the president here is putting a, quote, Texas-sized stamp on the legislature this session. And what's your thought about that?
Well, I think you mentioned, school choice. This has been something that has been going on for well over a decade, before President Trump even became president. I mean, I was one of those people who supported school choice for many, many years, as with many of my colleagues. And I think it's great that this new influx of Republican freshmen agreed. And he didn't endorse every single Republican who voted for school choice. So I think that's important to point out as well. But at the same time, the other issues that you mentioned, again, have been on the tops of the minds of many conservative Republicans in the state of Texas. And this is just one of the new ones. Again, the maps were in court. I believe the federal trial, if you look at the news, I think was May. We ended session in June. The proclamation came in July. So everything is pretty much on schedule.
So you don't think that President Trump has put a stamp on the legislative session this time?
I think President Trump is standing up for the people of Texas because they want him to. He won the state. He has a lot of support here. He is the leader of the Republican Party. And so I think any leader of any party would have some sort of influence over the members, over the public. And I think it's been great, and Texas is better for it.
Republican State Representative Katrina Pierson of Rockwall, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Democratic member of the Texas House of Representatives, Ann Johnson, joins me now. Ann, I'm sorry to impose that mini essay upon you, but give me the latest. Give me the latest from your perspective on where this standoff is, when, if ever, Democrats will return to Texas, and how this might be resolved.
You're seeing Texas Republicans take that partisan extremism to its furthest point. Just yesterday, one of my colleagues said they are doing this simply because they can, not because it's the will of the Texas people or anything that any of us want, but they are doing it purely for political, partisan, Republican motives. They are doing it to help Trump. As you know, last year, North Carolina, they had him steal 4 seats. He has now passed his big ugly bill by 1 vote. He is deathly afraid of the voters and unable to run on a policy because the policies he's inflicting on Texans and Americans every day is bad. And so he has now asked Texas to steal him 5 seats to rig the outcome of the next November 2026 election. And as Democrats, we are not willing to stand for it.
When are you going to come back to the state?
Well, our goal here is to defeat this particular special session. And as you know, the governor calls it for 30 days. And so we have towards the end of August to finish out this session. And then at that point, everything resets. And you go back to Governor Abbott. What do you want to do? What do you want us to talk about? And special sessions are supposed to be just that, special. They're not supposed to be overtime plays for purely partisan gifts. It's supposed to be addressing things like flooding or human trafficking or any other crisis that affects everyday Texans. But that's not what my colleagues did. We have been there for 2 weeks. In the middle of any other crisis that's happening, there was one bill they put forward, and that's a redistricting bill for Trump. And so when we defeat this session, it will be up to Governor Abbott to determine if he wants to call us back and what's his priority. Does he want us to talk about the issues important to the people of Texas, or does he, again, want to give Trump the gift of stealing 5 congressional seats before the next election?
There is no such thing as a brief bomb scare. Whenever it lasts, it's traumatic to anyone involved. And a building was evacuated in Illinois where many Texas Democrats were. Do you and your colleagues feel unsafe in this present moment, and are also, in addition to that, whatever that aspect of fear that continues is, are you nervous about federal law enforcement coming to try to arrest you?
First off, I want to thank all of the local law enforcement officers who have responded. Yes, it happened. We are safe and we are undeterred about the important thing that we have to do. I'll tell you, we continue to experience threats and harassment. And so right now, when you make this allegation that Trump and federal authorities might be trying to make an arrest on us, I want everybody to remember Trump's afraid of the voters. He asked Governor Abbott to steal him 5 seats. He is now threatening federal arrest to come get us, force us back in our spot so that he can again do a power grab. None of this is American. All of this sounds like a dictator desperate to hold on to his power, and it should scare everybody in this country that we've reached this point. It is why, as Texas Democrats, we are reaching to the nation to say these are not normal times. Please step up and find the courage to let them know that they have gone way too far.
Will you and fellow Texas Democrats take extra precautions going forward?
I mean, we've taken precautions. We have known from the beginning, unfortunately. I think we all know the climate, the mood of where we are. I'm your former chief human trafficking prosecutor in Houston. I've had my life threatened plenty of times by criminals. I never thought it would be coming from the governor, the attorney general, or the president of the United States. And so this is a shocking moment, and I think it highlights just how far off the rails the Republican Party has gone, how un-American, how undemocratic they are, and why everybody needs to pay attention to what's happening in Texas. This is no longer just about Texas. This is about everybody maintaining their voice, their right to vote nationwide, and not rig the next election to benefit Trump.
And Johnson, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Brian Harrison joins me now. Brian, you were on our show Monday. I thank you for that time. You have time now. You just heard Ann Johnson, un-American, off the rails, anti-democratic. I give you, again, a forum to respond because I want to hear both sides of this argument.
Oh my goodness, complete and utter nonsense. Okay, she doesn't care about doing the will of the voters of the people of Texas, and I know this firsthand. There's nothing perhaps more unpopular in Texas than COVID vaccine mandates, okay? And she is one of the biggest pushers of COVID vaccine mandates to this day in the state of Texas, and in fact, been partly successful in all of the efforts to thwart the desires to ban COVID vaccine mandates for students. So no, the idea that she cares about doing the will of the voters of Texas is farcical. This is absolutely in the best interest of the state of Texas. It's what my voters want. It's what voters across the state of Texas want. And listen, the facts could not be more 180 off as presented here. Texas is doing something that Democrats have to respond to. That's nonsense. Okay, blue state after blue state after blue state has been gerrymandering the heck out of their states for the past 10 years, and you don't have to take my word for it. The data proves it. 9 years ago in the U.S. Congressional elections, Republicans had a 1-seat popular vote advantage, but had a 45-seat advantage in the U.S. Congress, compared to just last year where Republicans had expanded the popular vote to 3% nationwide, but only had a 3 or 4 seat margin in the U.S. House. Well, why is that? It's because the liberal Democrats in the liberal blue states that all my liberal Democrat colleagues are hanging out and hiding, shirking their constitutional responsibilities to be here doing the people's business, those blue states have gerrymandered almost all the Republican seats out of their states. And most of my colleagues are hanging out in Illinois, and it's impossible to overstate the hypocrisy of that, because if Governor Pritzker knows about one thing and only one thing, it's how to gerrymander a state. Republicans in Illinois make up 45% of the vote, but Illinois only gives Republicans 15% of the vote. So here's the reality, the dirty little secret that the Democrats, like my colleague there right before me, don't want America to know. They have absolutely no problem whatsoever with states redrawing their congressional maps to maximize partisan political advantage. They're just angry that Republican states are finally getting around to redrawing their maps so that we can fight as hard for the future as they have been.
Mr. Harrison, do you want federal law enforcement to go track them down in wherever jurisdiction they might be residing currently?
I actually called on the governor to do that days and days ago. And that's the flip side of this story, quite frankly. Everybody wants to focus on the Democrats fleeing the state to thwart our redistricting efforts. And yeah, that's a big story. But I think what's equally as big of a story is how much of an abject failure this is on the part of the elected Republican leadership in the state of Texas that could have done two things if we had truly bold Republican leadership here in Texas. Number one, our so-called Republican Speaker of the Texas House, by the way, who my colleague Ann Johnson, a radical leftist extremist socialist Democrat, voted for. The Democrats elected our so-called Republican Speaker, and as part of payback, he released the Democrats last Wednesday when we had the maps in the system, we had the Democrats here, we had a quorum, and he released the Democrats to get a head start on their quorum break. So number one, if we had bolder Republican leadership in Texas, this quorum break never would have happened. And number two, if we had bolder, real Republican leadership in Texas, this quorum break would have been ended because swift and severe punishment would have been meted out to these Democrats. Not one Democrat has been stripped of their seniority, their committee assignments, their budgets, their staff. Hell, we haven't even taken away their parking spots yet. So no, I continue to call on the leadership, the Republican leadership in the state of Texas, to do what the voters of Texas want. In addition to the redistricting, they want more than just bold rhetoric. They want bold action. They want these Democrats who are abdicating their constitutional responsibilities to be punished. Quite frankly, they want them arrested. They want them brought back so that we can get about doing the business of the voters of the great state of Texas.
Brian Harrison, I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
Always great to be with you.